looked a bit unusual holding one of these rifles in the 1890s, they were used for war, back when it was strictly a man's world. Our first overseas contingent went to the Boer War in 1899. Women weren't allowed on the battlefield in South Africa, but it didn't stop some of them from pretending here at home. They called themselves the Amazons.
New Zealand was part of the British Empire, and the British Empire was at war with the Boers of the South African Republic in Transvaal and their allies, the Orange Free State. And so there was no question that everybody would be behind this war. War was very expensive. It cost £100 to equip and transport one soldier. That's the equivalent of over $17,000 in today's money. A handful of women did go to South Africa as nurses and teachers, but the vast majority stayed at home and threw themselves into fundraising. They took part in big parades and galas and fetes. The group was known as the Young Ladies Contingent or the Wellington Amazons.
Was this very similar to what women were wearing back in those days?
In terms of the silhouette, yes. But in terms of the design, it's a far cry from the clothing that young society girls and women would have been wearing in those days. They would have worn different colours. The surface would have been embellished with ribbons or pom-poms or lace or braiding. So a lot more frivolous and frou-frou.
And was this colour inspired by what the soldiers wore to the Boer War?
It's partly modelled on a soldier's uniform.
Sure, I can see the brass buttons over here.
Yeah, definitely. 3 of them are just flat brass buttons, and the other 4, believe it or not, look like navy buttons. I think the young woman who wore this uniform stole them from her father's uniform. He had been in the Navy in the 19th century.
Now, just looking at the size of this garment, it's quite, you know, compared to me, this is quite a small outfit. How did they get their waists so small?
All women wore corsets. You can see her waist is very nipped in here.
Irene Edwin wore this uniform to a fundraising fete at Government House. Entertainment was provided by the Wellington Amazons.
There were around about 50 or 60, and they were the daughters of Wellington's social and political elite, and they put on a good display, mimicking some of the moves that soldiers did. They did some drills with their rifles. They made a guard of honour for the Premier, Richard Seddon, and also took part in a tableau. I think they would have felt proud wearing them. It was a way to express their patriotism and their duty to the Empire.
The Amazons raised about £100 at the Wellington fundraiser, and throughout the war, the public donated thousands more. It helped send 6,500 men to war, the first time New Zealand went to fight overseas.